is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 531. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, we're back, baby.
Yeah. We took a kind of unanticipated break last week since you were suffering in the in the brutal Hawaiian climate.
I did actually want to mention that because it wasn't planned, which is why I never actually said anything. But we actually planned on doing a show from Hawaii. I was in Hawaii and Luis would be in Colorado, and we always can kind of figure these out. But the lead up to Worlds was hectic, to say the least, for me on the coverage front. And so it was like, okay, let's just push it off till tomorrow. Let's just push it off till tomorrow. Let's just push it off till tomorrow. And then next thing you know, it's Sunday, and I'm like, well, crap. So what my plan is I'm going to make it up to you, dear listener, and I'm planning on doing 2 shows next week. I'm poking around for a special guest on one, or Luis, if you want to join me for a second show, you can as well. But I don't want to dump 2 shows on you in one week. But at any rate, my plan is to do 2 shows next week to make up for the one, and we do apologize for that. Oh my God. It was like one sentence. I didn't even... Is this just reflecting your current mood or what?
That was a pre-recorded yawn. I did have to go to the soundboard for that one.
I know that. I now can recognize it. At any rate, we're back, and this week we've got an action-packed show for you. We're going to be doing our draft walkthrough for Theros Beyond Death. So this is the one where I once again will attempt to record a video of it and put that into the video feed. We do have a YouTube channel where we put up every episode with card images in there, and then this one, if the magic gods are willing, you'll be able to watch us draft this. And then I'll figure out a way to, what I've done the last few times is I've played out the matches with the deck as a video that was exclusive for patrons. So we'll do something similar to that for this as well. We're also going to talk about the 2 archetypes that we have not talked about yet, which is blue, green, and blue, white. We've covered all the other in previous shows. And we're going to touch on Toralf Zeverin's just nuclear bomb on the draft in Hawaii for the World Championship, where the players did easily the highest stakes draft in the history of our game. We'll talk about that as well. Before we get into all that, though, channelfireball.com is our sponsor. Look, I mentioned it on many of the shows, but I'm going to hammer it here. If you have cards to sell, go to channelfireball.com/buy list and sell them to Channel Fireball. It's really easy. You can set up an account super quick, and you do it. It feels a lot like when you buy cards. You just go through, search for the ones you, in this case, have, type in the amount, and then add them to like a virtual cart. Once you get all of them in there, it'll tell you, and it tells you, by the way, up front, like, this is how much we give for a near mint copy of this. And then you add them all up and you can see what you're going to get. Then you can choose whether you want to get it in money, like in a check or PayPal, or if you want to get it in store credit, which if you choose that option, you'll get a 30% bonus on top of whatever else you were going to get. So that's great. Then you package up the cards, you send them into Channel Fireball, they'll get them, grade them quickly, and boom, your payment will be out to you just like that. So it's really straightforward. And I got to say, Magic's an expensive hobby. Let's not beat around the bush here. This is a great way to stem the bleeding there, where if you're saving up for a new deck, you can cash in an old deck, or maybe a pile of rares, or, maybe an EDH deck that didn't pan out for you or whatever, and you can turn that into a standard deck or a box of cards that you can draft with your friends. Channelfireball.com/buy list to check out the prices and all that kind of stuff over at CFB. Also, the show is brought to you by you via the Patreon. That's right, patreon.com/limited resources. Thank you to each and every one of you who have signed up on the Patreon. We've got a nice bump of late. That we really appreciate that from our listeners. If you enjoy this show, if it's worth something to you on that level, and if you're in a position to do so, please head on over to patreon.com/limited resources, and you can see the cool benefits. One of which is you get to put questions in for the Patreon question of the week, which we have here from Nikolai Bolas, who says, now that there are more playable cards in every pack, do you think Limited has gotten less rewarding for good drafters who read signals and find the open lane?
Definitely.
It's a good question. It's a good question, isn't it? Because I talk to you guys and even older school players than you, Luis, like the Huey, generation. And I mean, they said it was just brutal back in the day. Like some of the cards were so horrendously unplayable that you were kind of scrapping it out for playables just in a normal draft set. We never face that anymore.
Yeah, so what that ends up leading to is certainly that you get less punished for being in the cutoff colors, and how that can manifest. Actually, it's funny you mentioned Toralf Severin's like Dream Trawler pick. Like, we'll talk about that pick later, but like that sort of thing you can actually do now, where you're just like, let's say in pack 1 you're black red. The less extreme version is you're like black red, and then you open Elspeth Conquers Death, and you're like, well, Elspeth Conquers Death is 10x better than my next best card. I've got 5 good black cards and 3 good red cards, or 4 good red cards. Well, I'm just going to take Elspeth Conquers Death and try to be black-white. Even though white was completely cut pack 1, I'll get white in pack 2 and then black in pack 3, and I'll still end up with 27 playables and have to cut some cards. It also means that if you stubbornly just stick with your first pick, where you open like the first Eroan Games and you're like a good green card, and at the end of pack 1 you have 3 green cards and that's the only good one. Green's not open, but you just stubbornly stick to green. At the end of the draft, you're still going to have enough playables even if you're getting cut. That's not to say it's useless to find the open lane and read signals. That is still going to be a very useful skill, and it'll still make you have a better deck, but you get punished dramatically less. Look, when you have to play an extra Nyxborn Colossus or something like that in your deck, or, Scophos War Leader, Rage Scarred Minotaur, like, these are, or Berserker rather, these are not weak cards. These cards are all fine.
Mm-hmm. And they are totally fine.
It used to be that you would end up in a spot where you're like, I guess I can play 19 lands, or, all right, time to get this 4-mana 2/3 into my deck. And we're just not in that world anymore, which means that, yeah, you still get rewarded heavily for being in the right colors, because then you're going to get a 5th pick Dreadful Apathy, and you're just going to, end up with a great deck. But if you're in the wrong colors and you open well, you can still end up with like, your first 3 picks of good cards, because there's enough cards that you're always going to get something good, or likely going to get something good in the first 3 picks. And then, yeah, your picks 4 through 7 or 8 are worse, but you'll still scrap together enough playables, and you could still just beat someone who's got who had the exact open colors, because your decks aren't going to be that far apart. So yes, it has gotten less rewarding.
It's interesting how our job has become to help people differentiate better between, a card, really 2 playables, right? Versus like stay away from this 1-mana enchantment that does, makes you discard cards. They just printed these cards that were so bad back in the day, and now it's like 3/2 for 3 versus 4/5 for 5 with a minor ability. Like these are the hairs that we split now. But yeah, there's still an edge to be gained there.
Oh, definitely still an edge. I don't want to take that away, and I think that you'll still see the people who draft better and play better kind of get the reward for that. But it used to be that if you didn't know what you were doing, this is part of the reason that the win rates for someone like John Finkel back in like the 90s were just absurd, is you would just play against people who didn't have decks, because it was possible to just not draft a deck, at these times. Of course, even going even further back, you'd play against people who were playing 13 lands because no one just knew how limited worked. But
yeah,
that's
rough. Yeah, that is really rough, and and multiple colors and all that. Okay, so thanks for the question, Nikolai Bolas. Let's. Do you want to do the archetypes real quick, and then we'll do the draft?
No,
we're not doing a crack a pack. You want to get in the draft? Okay, let's do that right now. So I am going to share my screen with you, Luis, which I already did, right?
Yep.
Okay, then I'm going to start recording here. You can still hear me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And I'm still live in this thing. All right, perfect. So let's jump into this thing and let's see what we open up. For those of you listening on audio only, we're going to do our best to keep you in the loop as well. And again, if you do want to watch this happen, theoretically, you can go to our YouTube channel, Limited Resources, and find it. So our opening pack, our rare, is Thassa's Oracle, the blue 1/3 with the alternate win condition. We've got Alseid of Life's Bounty, Favored of Erois, and Hero of the Nyxborn. Wow, aggressive 3 white and then a white-red uncommon. And then looking at the rares,
the commons, rather.
The commons, Caryatid,
Triumphant Surge. No playable commons.
Nothing that's going to tussle with these cards up top. So,
no, I mean, really, there's only. I think that there's only 3 cards to really discuss here. It's Thassa's Oracle, Alseid of Life's Bounty, and Hero of the Nyxborn. I would immediately rule out Hero because it's a 2-color card, and I'm not even convinced it's better than Alseid of Life's Bounty, for example, in white. And then I actually really love Thassa's Oracle. I would lean towards just taking Thassa's Oracle. I found if you first pick Thassa's Oracle, you can draft a really, really strong blue control deck.
I agree 100%. And also, anytime you find yourself in a grindy matchup, having a card like Thassa's Oracle as a backup plan. I was playing Seal deck against Adam. He's going to GP in Reno. And so he wanted to get some practice in because that's a limited GP. And I had played Thassa's Oracle in my deck, and he asked me like, well, is it fine? Are you excited about it? Whatever. And I showed him that at that point in the game, I had 10 cards left in my library. And with the Oracle, I would have had 8 Devotion. Now, I also was ahead on board and I was able to win the game outside of it. But, I told him I could wait 2 turns. And if you tap out, I win the game. Like, and if you don't have an instant speed removal spell, I win the game. I could wait 4 turns and I could just win the game, and he's like, oh, okay. And then of course the ceiling or the floor is not too bad. So we're going to take Thassa's Oracle. Our next pack has Escape Velocity, the Triumph of Annex, Acolyte of Affliction. I do like that card. And then what's the best blue card here? Nothing. There's a Naiad of Hidden Coves, Revoke Existence. Wow, this pack's a stinker, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're going to get a good card out of this pack. It's going to be Acolyte of Affliction, and it's not necessarily going to work with our first pick. Though I don't think it's unreasonable to end up blue-black splash green or green-blue splash black to play both these cards. I wouldn't look to do that. This is actually a good pack to open for the show because look, it's not like we opened Thassa's Oracle, then got past, Mire's Grasp or just like another good blue card, right. An Omen of the Sea or an Ichthyomorphosis. We opened a double blue card, and now we're going to take a green, black, gold card because it's just the best card in the pack by miles. It's such a weak pack, and we'll just have to see where it goes from here. We have a lot of different directions we could go. This is the interesting part about draft.
Right, so we've got Thassa's Oracle and Acolyte of Affliction in our pile. Our next pack has One with the Stars, Underworld Fires, Clothis' Design as our uncommons. And then we actually have some decent commons here, though. There's Omen of the Sea, Deny the Divine, Funeral Rites, and Venomous Hierophant right in the middle. And then there's also a Loathsome Chimera and even the much coveted by some Worlds competitors, Relentless Pursuit. So the big question here, of course, is if we're going to take one of these blue or black cards, so One with the Stars, Deny the Divine, Omen of the Sea, Funeral Rites, or Venomous Hierophant, if we take the black card, that goes with the Acolyte. If we take the blue card, that kind of backs up our Thassa's Oracle. So that's a decision that we'll have to make. But the real question here is, what's the most powerful card? What card do we just want to take out of the pack, I think? And One with the Stars does a good job of acting as a pacifism, so that's probably on the list. I don't think I could play enough Omen of the Sea. I just think that card is just excellent. And then I love a Venomous Hierophant as well. So those are the 3 that kind of catch my eye. Where do you land?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I think that Omen of the Sea is better than One with the Stars. So that kind of knocks One with the Stars just off the list. But I really think this pack, and this is an interesting pick, it boils down to Omen of the Sea versus Venomous Hierophant. I believe Omen of the Sea is a little bit better. But one of the things you have to do when you draft is you have to weight every pick in terms of how much of a signal it is, at least until you've established your colors.
Right.
And your second, third, fourth picks each are successively worth more in terms of signaling than your first pick, because in your first pick, there was no signal. You just opened a pack and took it. No one else had any input. That being said, your second pick's not a huge signal, and Thassa's Oracle is a monocolor card versus a 2-color card. I would still probably lean towards just taking Omen of the Sea, but I think taking Venomous Hierophant's not a bad pick because it works with both of the cards we have. Whereas Omen of the Sea doesn't work all that well with Acolyte of Affliction. Yeah,
I'm going to take Omen of the Sea here. I find that card is absolutely fantastic, and I want as many as I can get. So let's just take it. Next, we've got another Alseid of Life's Bounty. Now, that's the only uncommon, and there's no other cards left, but there's an even better common here. There's Dreadful Apathy in white. In our colors, it's pretty loose. There's a Vexing Gull and a Brine Giant.
Yeah, so this is the sort of pick that Omen of the Sea kind of rewards us for making, because I believe we're just going to take Dreadful Apathy here.
Yeah, for sure. We're just otherwise we take Vexing Gull.
Right. Dreadful Apathy is the best card by a lot. Had we taken Venomous Hierophant here, we'd still probably take Dreadful Apathy because the only green cards are like Setessan Blessing and Skola Gravedancer, and the only blue cards, like you said, are Brine Giant and Vexing Gull. These cards are just too weak. So just take Dreadful Apathy. And look, it might look like our draft's a mess, but I actually think we're like narrowing in on where we want to be. And in fact, this pack has another Dreadful Apathy alongside a couple good green cards, Chainweb Arachneer and Nessian Wanderer. So Nessian Wanderer is a pretty strong uncommon. This is the 1/3 that has Constellation. Look at the top 3, put a land into your hand.
Yeah, it's very strong at 2 mana.
I think it's just an easy scoop of the second Dreadful Apathy, and we're closing in on a nice blue-white control deck here. I don't mind. I don't mind the direction this is heading. At this point, I'd probably even hide the Acolyte of Affliction because it's just really not that likely to be relevant here. Though we can pivot again if we need to. But we have now 2 good blue cards and 2 good white cards, and more importantly than anything else, we got past 5th and 6th pick or 4th and 5th pick Dreadful Apathy. Yeah. And that's the real signal. That's like, oh, okay, white is coming through, because remember that one of the first Dreadful Apathy had the Alseid as well.
Yes.
So there was 2 good white cards in that pack even after 3 cards had already been taken, and these are first pick quality white cards. So I'm definitely feeling that the white vibe, and I would lean staying blue unless there's a good reason not to. This pack is pretty weak. The best card in the pack is Mischievous Chimera, the blue-red uncommon 2/2 flyer for 2, but we're not really interested in that. The best blue card is a Vexen Gull over Nyxborn Seaguard. I actually like Vexen Gull. I've started to be a little more impressed with it. And the only other card that's really good here is Discordant Piper, the 2/1 for 1 and a black that makes a 0/1 goat when it dies. But that's not really a consideration here either. I would lean towards just taking Vexen Gull.
Same. I'm going to take the Gull, and that's going to leave us with Omen of the Sea, Thassa's Oracle, and 2 Dreadful Apathy to go with the Vexing Gull. Next pick, okay, kind of interesting. Escape Velocity is the only uncommon. The rest are commons. There's a Riptide Turtle, which has overperformed for me. There's a lot of red cards here. There's Final Flare, Portent of Betrayal, Satyr's Cunning, whatever, but there's an Underworld Ragehound here as well.
Yeah, good red, but at this point we are, I think, past that point. I would just take the Riptide Turtle. If the Riptide Turtle wasn't here, we'd just take the best card in the pack. Ooh, so here we've got Whirlwind Denial as a solid uncommon, but also Nyxborn Courser, the 1 white 2/4, and Sentinel's Eyes, the enchantment that has escape. I actually like Sentinel's Eyes quite a bit. I actually that or Whirlwind Denial are both pretty reasonable picks here.
Yeah, I think I would take the Whirlwind Denial over the Sentinel's Eyes, but it's not. It's pretty close, though. So let's say that. Let's take that. So we take Whirlwind Denial. Once again, Omen of the Sea, Turtle, Thassa's Oracle, double Dreadful Apathy, Vexing Gull, Whirlwind Denial. And now we actually wield the Triumphant Surge out of the pack that we opened. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I would take that. Note that we have 5 blue cards and 2 white cards. Yeah. Plus the Acolyte, the green-black card, just kind of lurking in our sideboard. We're in position where if in pack 2, we opened just an excellent black rare, I would lean towards just taking it, because we don't have anything really like locking us into white here. At this point, it's probably a little late to switch out of blue, but our second color is not locked in. Plus, double Dreadful Apathy is potentially a splash as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because the only blue card in this pack is Towering Wave Mystic, which is basically an unplayable. If this was a Vexing Gull, I would just take it over the Triumphant Surge and just try to stick to full blue. But as it stands, I'll just take the Surge here. And we'll, but I like your take there. We're really, we can still pivot if we want in the next pack. Winding down this pack, we're going to pick up a Thaumaturge's Familiar here over a bunch of red cards. Let's see, Deny the Divine. Okay, with 4 cards left in the pack, pick 11, Deny the Divine. I'll take that.
No, that's great. Blue does seem to be open for sure.
It does indeed. And then with 3 cards left, whatever, doesn't matter. I'll just take a Skola Grove Dancer. Wow, Final Flare still here. Okay. And then we actually got a last pick, Nyxborn Seaguard. So
sure,
we are heavy blue and 2 Dreadful Apathies, and then like a mentionable Triumphant Surge. But as Louis said, if we open up something awesome in black, we'll shift. So let's see what we get here in pack 2. Ooh, Setessan Champion is our rare.
All right.
That's an interesting one. And then the rest of the cards are good too. There's another Whirlwind Denial, but there's a Drag to the Underworld as well as a Mire Triton in black. The white cards in the pack are lacking. Transcendent Envoy, Omen of the Sun, Leonin, Lost Pride, and Captivating Unicorn, so not cards that we actually want. The blue cards outside are actually not that great either. Whirlwind Denial's the best one, and there's Elite Instructor and Starlit Mantle. Easily the best cards in the pack are green and black, so Drag to the Underworld, Setessan Champion, and the Mire Triton.
I would lean towards just taking Citizen Champion here. Green wasn't particularly open pack one, but Citizen Champion's a really strong card. And you're just not giving up a blue or white card here. There's no blue or white card in this pack that you care about. So taking Citizen Champion and then keeping our options open, it looks like it's going to pay off. What's in this pack?
We've got a Eutropia the Twice Favored passed to us. There's also Illyrios Enraptured, which is a nice one, and an Ichthyomorphosis as well. But I kind of like just slamming Eutropia here, because if we do move into green, splashing for these 2 Dreadful Apathies probably won't be that hard anyway. So let's take Eutropia, which, by the way, was our preview card for LR. Hello. And see where this takes us. Our next pack has Glimpse of Freedom, which I don't really like. Omen of the Hunt, Traveler's Amulet. Well, there is a Daybreak Chimera.
I don't hate Omen of the Hunt here because it helps us splash these 2 Dreadful Apathies that I think we want to splash because of how well they work with Citizen Champion and Eutropia. And it's an enchantment for both Champion and Eutropia. So I like moving into green-blue constellation, splashing Dreadful Apathy. That it also is a pretty good Thassa's Oracle deck. And here we've got Calliphy, the Beloved of the Sea, the 1 blue 03 devotion is her power is equal to your devotion to blue, and then Ichthyomorphosis as the best common. So 2 solid blue cards, both happen to be enchantments. I think Calliphy is probably going to be the best pick because she works really well with Eutropia, very well with Citizen Champion, and also just helps get up your devotion for that Thassa's Oracle.
Yeah, I like Calliphy here. It's close, though. I am a fan of the turn him into a fish. Let's see. This next pack, we have a Vexing Gull or a Starlit Mantle, maybe.
Or a Naiad of Hidden Coves. I think you want to take... Well, I think you want to up your enchantment count. So I wouldn't take Vexing Gull here for sure. Right.
Okay. So Naiad over Gull, and then Starlit Mantle's the one that we have to decide if we want that.
I actually kind of like Starlit Mantle because you've got both Citizen Champion and Eutropia and Calliphy. Actually, you've got a bunch of really powerful creatures. Starlit Mantle, like if you play Citizen Champion and pass, they're just going to try to kill it, and then you can Starlit Mantle and just completely just destroy them.
All right, we will take that. Oh, hello, my friend. Wow, this is a good pack for us. So this next pack has another Eutropia, the Twice Favorite, and there's also a Thirst for Meaning here that we would take, but whatever, I'm taking Eutropia. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That's sweet. 2 of those. Okay, next one has, a Voracious Typhon and another Omen of the Hunt, as well as a Hydra's Growth and a Nessian Wanderer. Wow. Interesting thing about Nessian Wanderer, not an enchantment. It kind of has that sparkly look, but it's not actually an enchantment.
All the constellation cards are not enchantments in this set.
Right. So there you go. So do you like that or Voracious Typhon?
Oh, I like the Nessian Wanderer. I think we can just move really hard into Constellation here, where we're looking to cut this Vexing Gull, Whirlwind Denial, Riptide Turtle if we can, and play basically all enchantments. Of course, this next pack has no enchantments, but there is a Return to Nature or a second Riptide Turtle. I think the first Return to Nature is probably better.
Yeah, we'll take Return to Nature. I'll give a recap on the pack and just on our deck in just a moment. I'm making the cuts that Luis is suggesting as well. Another Starlit Mantle or an Elite Instructor.
That. Yeah, I'll take I think the Starlit Mantle is going to be decent here, and
we got a Hyrax Tower Scout to wind down the pack. Really not on brand for what our deck's trying to do, but it's the only pick. A Memory Drain is the next one. Another Nyxborn Seaguard. Hey, that's
Seaguard's nice. Yeah, we're going to want all the enchantments.
Right. So what do we want to cut here? Just so that I can read it to the people who can't see it. I guess I'll leave the Tower Scout in. All right. I guess a Familiar can go. Okay, we'll just leave it. Oh, and Memory Drain. Okay, so our deck right now is Omen of the Sea, 2 Starlit Mantle, a Thassa's Oracle, Nessian Wanderer, Return to Nature, and then at the 3 drops, currently 2 Dreadful Apathy, a Calliphy, a Deny the Divine, a Hyrax Tower Scout, an Omen of the Hunt, a Citizen Champion, 2 Eutropias, and then the 4 drops we have 2 Nyxborn Seaguards. So yes, we are thick at the 3 drop slot, no doubt about it. But we don't have much of a higher curve beyond that, so it's okay. We're going to pick up another Memory Drain here, though I don't think we're going to be playing it, and then a Plummet for the sideboard. All right. What's our best option? What do you want to open?
For this pack, Valkyra Best, the Sea God would certainly be the best card.
Okay, let's open that then. Oh, we did open a Mythic. It is Elspeth Sun's Nemesis, unfortunately. Very strong card, but out of range for us at this point, it seems. Heliod's Punishment, Sage of Mysteries are the other uncommons.
There really just is a limit to how often you can jump around. In pack 3, after we've already moved into blue-green, I don't think it'd be right to take Elspeth. I believe the pick is between Heliod's Punishment, which is a splashable single white card, or just a second Omen of the Hunt, and I think I'd rather just take Omen of the Hunt.
I would too. I unlocking these 2 dreadful apathies and then having triggers for the other cards are good. So we'll take Omen of the Hunt here.
Eat our vegetables.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, here's some dessert, though. We got Destiny Spinner.
Oh, that's a great one.
2/3 for 1 and a green, and it's an enchantment creature human with a bunch of relevant abilities. So yeah, that looks like an easy pickup here. There is a Drag to the Underworld in this pack, but we're going to take Destiny Spinner for this deck for sure. Okay, this one's not great. So this has Nyxborn Seaguard number 3, a Towering Wave Mystic, an Elusian Caryatid, a Moss Viper, or a Traveler's Amulet. I guess I would lead towards the Caryatid, even though I'm down on it from where I was at one point.
Yeah, I don't love the Caryatid, but I think it's the pick here, especially since we already we don't need Traveler's Amulet. We have 2 Omen of the Hunts. Caryatid also does picks our 3-color mana base, and I just don't love Moss Viper. If we were going to play Moss Viper, we already have a Riptide Turtle. Those cards aren't substantially different in terms of what they accomplish. So I like the Caryatid here.
Okay, we take the Caryatid. Now we've got not that many options here. Whirlwind Denial, Vexing Goal, or Omen of the Hunt. These are all cards that we have at least one.
We have one each of the first 2 and 2 Omen of the Hunts.
Actually, did we actually take that Whirlwind Denial?
Yeah. It's
in
the sideboard.
Yeah.
I really am not excited about playing any of these cards. I really don't want a 3rd Omen of the Hunt.
No.
I'd probably take the Vexing Goal. Yeah, it's a little better than Hyrax Tower Scout in general. But yeah. I don't know. We don't really want any of these cards. The thing is, we already have Memory Drain and Deny the Divine and a Whirlwind Denial. So I think a 4th counterspell when we're only going to be playing 1 or 2 of them is probably not great.
Hey, another Eutropia, the thrice favored now.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I would take, Eutropia is a legend, but she's still so good where if she stays in play, you tend to be winning. So I would just take Eutropia. And now we're to the point where we really can't afford to play many cards that aren't enchantments. I think at that point, a 3rd Omen of the Hunt, which is in this pack, becomes defensible.
Should we take
no? Maybe
Brine
we should just take Brine Giant. Yeah, Brine Giant's actually better.
Okay, I'm not the biggest fan, but it does seem like it goes in this deck. So we'll take Brine Giant.
It's good
here.
to give.
Oh, we got the Ichthyomorphosis back. What the?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Ichthyomorphosis is exactly what we're looking for. It's enchantment plus removal.
Now this we've got this is pick 8 in the 3rd pack. There's only one card. It's Relentless Pursuit. Are we running it?
I don't think so.
Okay. And then now we're on the wheel. So we've got Sage of Mysteries and another Riptide Turtle. There's really nothing else.
I would take Sage because there is some narrow outs where you board in Sage in the right matchup.
Oh, here's an interesting one. You like Nyxborn Colossus here? Nyxborn Seaguard or Deny the Divine?
I would not take Deny the Divine, though it's a stronger card. I think I would just take... I'm leaning towards just taking the 3rd Nyxborn Seaguard just because it does work so well with Eutropia. Though our curve's pretty low, maybe we could afford the Colossus.
Yeah, the triple green is doable for us, I think. Yeah, let's take the Colossus here.
Yeah, I guess we have 2 Omens and an Elysian Caryatid.
Look at that. We got another Seaguard anyway, the next pick. And the Whirlwind Denial came back as well. And then the last couple of picks are jank. So I'm going to... we're going to build this out and I'll verbalize what our deck ends up being, roughly speaking. And then again, I'll try to do a video or whatever so you can actually see this thing get played. Okay, so this is 45 cards. What are the obvious cuts here?
I think you just want to start by cutting basically Hyrax Tower Scout, and basically cards, Relentless Pursuit, cards that aren't enchantments. I think I might just cut the Brine Giant. I think picking up the Nyxborn Colossus kind of
is better. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is down to 41. One of the counters, maybe.
Yeah, probably the Whirlwind Denial. I think is a little worse than Don't Deny the Divine.
I think so too. Okay, so this is what our how many planes do we want? Just one. We have 2 Omen of the Hunt and the.
I think we can get away with 1 planes. And then play 9 forests and 7 islands or something like that. Just because we have 2 Omens plus a Nessian Wanderer, so hitting our first green goes a long way in terms of
Yeah.
in terms of getting us there in terms of mana.
Okay, so here's what our deck is for those of you following along on audio only. From the 2-drop slot, Thassa's Oracle, Destiny Spinner, Eleusian Caryatid, Nessian Wanderer, Omen of the Sea, and 2 Starlit Mantle to go with a main deck Return to Nature. 3 drops are Caliphie, Setessan Champion, 3 Utopia the Twice Favored, 2 Dreadful Apathy, Deny the Divine, Ichthyomorphosis, and 2 Omen of the Hunt. We've got 3 Nyxborn Seaguard at the 4, and then the Nyxborn Colossus. The mana is 9 Forest, 7 Island, and 8 Plains. So a couple more things to cover before we call it a show. Not actually that much. First things first, I wanted to talk about the blue-white flyers and the blue-green constellation deck. Well, I guess we should just start with blue-green constellation since we just drafted it.
It's funny because that we ended up doing it in this order, because one of the notes I had for blue-green constellation is that it's not a matchup you should end up in that often because you need high rarity cards as finishers. And literally in the notes here, I put Thassa's Oracle, Utopia the Twice Favorite, etc.
So we did it right.
Yeah, well, we did, because we wouldn't have been green except we opened Setessan Champion and then got past Utopia. And then it's like, okay, that does it, because what this deck is trying to do, like the theme is constellation cards plus enchantments. Where it breaks down at a common level is there's no constellation triggers at common that are that great. Like you have Nexus Wardens, sure. You don't want Triton Wave Dancer. Like you're just not getting that much of a payoff in blue and green for your constellation cards.
Yeah, the Skirmisher's weak. Yeah.
But if you end up picking up Utopia or a controlling card like Thassa's Oracle, like we didn't end up in the really controlling version that has like 3 Nexus Wardens and 3 Ichthyomorphosis, and that's where Thassa's Oracle really shines. Our deck, I think, I mean, we're going to play it because it's a great card, but I think our decks are actually just going to kill people with Utopia here. But if you have the higher rarity cards, blue-green can be really good. And of course, sometimes just the colors blue and green are open and you're getting late quality cards like late thirsts and chimeras and stuff from both directions. And you should just be in those colors. But the key commons for this archetype are Warbriar Blessing, which we didn't see any of, Omen of the Sea, Thirst for Meaning, Ichthyomorphosis are like the kind of premium ones, which is unsurprising. It's 2 blue card draw spells and a blue and green removal spell.
And 3 of them are enchantments. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you have like Nexus Wardens. Again, this is the 1/4 reach that gains you 2 on Constellation. And if you end up like playing a Nexus Wardens early, sometimes it can like save you 6 damage in the air and then gain you 8 life. It's a really powerful card in the right matchup.
It really can be. Yeah.
And then Witness of Tomorrows, the 3/4 flyer for 5 mana, Loathsome Chimera. These are both completely solid cards. And this deck relies a lot on key uncommons like Shimmering Chimera, like Utopia, like Nessian Wanderer. These are like the really good enchantment combo cards like Chimera returning Warbriar Blessing or an Omen, Nessian Wanderer and Utopia giving you some really high leverage constellation triggers. I think, if you were to start every color pair at like 10%, right, 1/10 of the field, this is one that you probably draft like closer to 1/20th of the time.
Yeah, 6% or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not a combination I would advocate going into without a higher rarity card, but we got that, and I think this deck looks really good.
Yeah, same. I think it's sweet too. Let's talk about blue-white. It does play out like a Flyers deck for the most part, which is somewhat predictable from blue-white, but there's actually some decent ones here. Daybreak Chimera comes to mind as this is the deck for Daybreak Chimera. It fits beautifully in this deck. Of course, Dreadful Apathy and Heliod's Pilgrim.
I do want to say that I have Daybreak below those 2 cards.
Yeah, I'm not really listing them in order, but
okay. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that came through. I think Apathy followed by Pilgrim is just the pick order you want to use for any white deck.
Agreed, for sure.
And well, one thing I do want to note is there are like a couple different kinds of blue-white decks, but certainly this is one of them.
Yeah, so I'll start with this one and then we can expand on it. But yeah, to me, this is the natural home for Daybreak Chimera. You can use cards like Sentinel's Eyes to buff up your Flyers, Sunmane Pegasus, Vexing Gull at common, right? These are sort of the bread and butter cards that you can put up a little bit of an air force with, and then you can start pumping them up with various auras. And, this deck does dip over into like an auras deck as well. So you're going to have to kind of figure out where your deck falls, but think about the ways that you can stop your opponent from killing you on the ground while you clock them in the air. So cards like Stern Dismissal go up in value. Yes, Riptide Turtle does too. It just holds off enough stuff for enough time that you're hitting them for like, say, 4 or 5 in the air, right? Like nothing amazing. You have a Transcendent Envoy, you curved into a Daybreak Chimera, you've got your 4 power in the air. Now you just need to not let them kill you on the ground, and you need to start slamming. The interesting part comes in that there are 2 ways to protect your creatures with, not Omen of the Sea, Starlit Mantle and Karametra's Blessing. And these are ways that you can protect your Aura'd Up creatures in that version. But even in the regular version, the weakness on blue-white flyers usually is if you kill their flyers, they have all these temporary or kind of speed bump style cards that are the rest of the deck. Like imagine if I did exactly the curve I mentioned. I go Transcendent Envoy into Daybreak Chimera. I've got my 4 power in the air, and I even played a Riptide Turtle. I have a Stern Dismissal in my hand. Now imagine that you just simply kill my Daybreak Chimera. My whole game plan fell apart. Like I can clock you for 1 in the air. That's fine. But like my stupid turtle's not going to hold you back forever. And Stern Dismissal is a temporary measure. It's not a firm removal spell that's going to actually just kill your creature. So that is where things get weaker. But if you run the Karametra's Blessings and or the Starlit Mantles, you can actually set up scenarios where their first removal spell doesn't get the job done, and usually that's enough time to kill them. From uncommon, Staggering Insight is the reason to be in this deck. It's the best card in the archetype, not close. It is awesome if you can get it onto basically any flyer and start hitting. And for the love of all things, do it as soon as you can reasonably do it. If you do have the protection spells, the 2 I mentioned go up way in value if you have a Staggering Insight or 2 in your pool. And it's awesome. And then you also get access to other uncommons like Shimmering Chimera, which you can use with all different types of things. My favorite one isn't fancy, but it's simple. It's just Omen of the Sea. Pick up an Omen of the Sea every turn, play it, get an extra card, go through your library really quick. If that lasts for even just a few turns, your Shimmering Chimera can win. And then also it clocks them. It's still a 3/2 flyer that bashes them. And then, of course, you get cards like Banishing Light in the archetype as well. What was the other twist on it that you wanted to hit on, Luis?
There's kind of 2. One is Blue-White Dream Trawler, which it doesn't literally always need a Dream Trawler, but Blue-White Control is kind of like a deck that you draft if you ended up like, we actually were veering towards that when we for a period of time had Thassa's Oracle, Riptide Turtle, 2 Dreadful Apathies and a counterspell, right? And an Omen of the Sea. And how Blue-White Control works is if you have a good finisher like a Dream Trawler, Thassa's Oracle, Elspeth Conquers Death, Kiora Best the Sea God, there's just like a lot of solid, really good blue and white ways to close out games. And then you're looking for apathies, turtles, counterspells, card draw. And this only works if you have a good finisher. And I don't mean 2 Witness of Tomorrows and a Daybreak Chimera. I mean like an actual hard finisher like Kiora Best the Sea God or Dream Trawler or Thassa's Oracle. It can actually serve here. And then there's the blue-white aggressive deck, which has a lot in common with the blue-white flyers deck, but doesn't always need flyers. What it can be is basically mono-white, Hero of the Pride, Pious Wayfarer, splashing blue for like Staggering Insight, or even like Vexing Goal, like just a couple blue cards. You want to aim towards playing 6 blue cards or something like that. And these are the decks less likely to want cards like Deny the Divine and Thirst for Meaning, and more likely just to want the more aggressive cards or like Stern Dismissal, that sort of thing. But those decks can end up working out really nicely. Basically, how you get into those is you have a bunch of white cards and you pick up a Staggering Insight, and then it goes with your Heliod's Pilgrim, and you end up just playing a Staggering Insight, like an Ichthyomorphosis, a Stern Dismissal, and a Vexing Goal in your white aggressive deck.
Yeah, there you go.
But I think blue-white is okay. I think in general, it's like blue-green, where I don't like the blue-white flyers deck. I just don't think is that good. I think that the blue-white flyers deck, it lacks a little bit of oomph, and the removal's so good in this set that I feel like, the situation you described where they kill your Daybreak Chimera and your plan falls apart, like that just happens a little too often for my liking. So I haven't, basically the cards I've won with in blue-white are, of course, the rares like Dream Trawler. I've won with Staggering Insight, and I've won in the really aggressive white deck that just has a couple blue cards. The traditional blue-white flyers deck, while it is a deck, and sometimes it'll be correct to draft it, I haven't won that much with it compared to the other versions of the blue-white deck, just based on how the flyers decks are just traditionally a little soft to, your opponent having 3 good removal spells and you ending up with a bunch of turtles and not a way to do something.
One card that I wanted to mention before we talk about our last little chunk of topic here was Pious Wayfarer, which is a card that I've seen get a good amount of buzz on Twitter as being better than it looked, which I agree, it is better than it looked. I still don't really like it, though. When my opponent plays it, it does do things. And if you build around it, it really does pull its weight for a 1-drop. Of course, it does come with the caveats of if you draw it later in the game, it's pretty bad because you've usually kind of used up everything that it would have been good at. But a turn 1 Pious Wayfarer is usually good for, call it 4, 5, 6 damage, either from itself or from other things if built around properly. And that's a lot for a 1-mana creature. That said, I still don't prioritize it, and maybe other people are picking it higher or something. Where are you at on it? Do you want it in these type of decks or in any of the white archetypes that we discussed before? I
like it quite a bit in the aggressive white decks because those are the decks that want to play Sentinel's Eyes, Indomitable Will, Aspect of the Chimera, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's a 1-drop that can have a pretty good impact on the game. I think it's probably after Apathy, Pilgrim, Daybreak, Chimera, Hero of the Pride. It's probably it can be in the around the 5th best white common, which is pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think for the aggressive decks, yeah.
For the aggressive decks, yes, you'd certainly have to be aggressive.
And by the way, I just want to note again, Wizards R&D really doing a good job of making these 1-drops actually a thing, right? There was such a long stretch of time where you just basically would ignore the 1-drops almost no matter what if they were at common, and it was almost like kind of laughable to play them. And now they keep producing 1-drops that you actually want to consider. And they're an interesting twist. They're something that you don't normally have in a limited deck, very many 1-drops. So kudos to them. I like that they're pushing into that space and kind of making us recognize these cards. Okay, one last thing to talk about, Luis, and it's big. So as I mentioned before, I was at the World Championship doing coverage, and it was an absurd event. And the way things played out, I did not know going before I landed, but I was kind of figured it out as we went, and I was told by various staff about how things went with the draft structure. The structure of the tournament ended up favoring or putting an extreme weight on the booster draft portion, which was only the first round. That was it. It was just the first section where they played 3 rounds after a booster draft. And that was it. And the idea was that you wanted to get to 2 wins rather than the 2 losses. You couldn't be eliminated just yet. But the way that the tournament structure actually played out was weird. It was set off of a series of brackets that you could earn your way into the upper or lower brackets and keep proceeding. But the shortest way to win the World Championship was to do well in your booster draft, which puts you in the upper part of the initial stages of the tournament. And then if you just simply did well in the next one, it just vaulted you basically into day 2, and also with consider it like a 3-round bye or something, a 2-round bye into day 2. You didn't have to play the first part of the day. It was absolutely stunningly shocking how much weight the booster draft carried in relation to the other rounds. It was insane.
I love draft, and I love the draft as at Worlds. This format was not good. The structure was not good. I remember there, basically once the stats folks started getting their hands on it, if you want like a detailed look, like at Seth Byrne on Twitter, he does like sports betting, and he looked at it and he was like, well, going 2-1 in draft made you 12% likely to win the tournament. Going 1-2 in draft made you less than 1%. So the difference, that one match was a difference of something like 15x more likely to win the tournament, or 13x more likely to win the tournament.
Yeah. The players who did well in the draft and then did well in that next little section, there was 4 of them that got put into that part that I said where they get to skip. And the math that they had on Twitter was that those 4 players each had 23% chance to win the tournament. Now, if you do the math though, it's like, wait a minute, that doesn't really leave much for everybody else. It leaves 8% left. And that 8% was distributed among 8 remaining players who didn't do well in the draft and so were in the lower part. So it was 1% for each of those and 23 for the players at the top. And the players at the top are the ones that 2-0'd the draft. So this was easily the most important, highest stakes draft in the history of our game, and it will be that forever. Like, because of the way that the structure.
Yeah, I would suspect we don't run this back. Also, like 2 of the players who did well in the draft ended up in the top 2 of the tournament. You know, this like the structure worked as presumably intended.
Yes, it did. Now, here's where things got really interesting. So, me and Paul Chion, we were doing a special segment, and it ended up being pretty cool. There were some graphical issues that made it, a little bit harder to kind of decipher. But basically, they had a video team that was able to record the draft of a player the day before, because the World Championship was played on Arena, but they don't yet have 8-player drafts, although they will, by the way. I don't know if we mentioned it on the show, but they did say in an official update that they're going to have 8-player drafts later this year, quote. So yay, finally, that'll be freaking awesome. But they didn't have that ready yet for World, so they actually drafted in paper and then built their decks on Arena for the actual play. But the draft in paper happened the day before. So what that meant is that they had a camera crew in there, and we got to watch a feature drafter like we normally do, but they also kept an eye on everything else that was going on throughout the table, and we were able to implement graphics. Really cool idea by one of the Wizards producers named Jason, and he put it in where you could see what each player was drafting, and we got to show it on that video after each pack and how things changed. But here's where things got completely absurd. I still cannot believe, like, people were coming over to me while I was watching our feature drafter draft, who was Glogowski, and they were like showing me their phone, and it had writing on it about what had just happened. And I'm like, I have to remain a kind of a poker face because, I'm in a professional setting, but I was like, holy, like I would have freaked out if I could have. So what happened is Toralf Severin is drafting opposite where Glogowski's at. So I can't see any of his picks or anything like that. After the first pack, he has all black and red cards. So, he's got some decent, mediocre pile of black and red cards, and he's kind of feeling out his spot. Sitting next to him, Autumn Burchett is drafting blue-white. And, there's so people, as it goes in a booster draft, are settling into their lanes. They're kind of feeling out their neighbors and figuring out where they should be and doing all this stuff. Pack 2, pick 1, Toralf opens Dream Trawler.
Yep.
So he opens, the best card in the set, however you want to break it down. One of the best cards in the set, but it's blue, white in its mana cost. And he currently has a pile of black and red cards. Now, I just want a snapshot here. Luis, what do you do in that spot? Again, the stakes of this draft. This is not a fun draft or even a Pro Tour draft. This is the draft of your entire life. Can you talk yourself into switching into a Dream Trawler? Let's say your black-red pile is good, not great.
I would have to know exactly what your cards are, but in general, I would say that I would be tempted to switch, but I ultimately am not that likely to do so.
Okay. Like I don't know what his I'll try to find out if I can, but let's say there's a thirst for meaning in the Packers or a decent black or red spell. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so if at the end of the pack 1 I have 5 black cards and like 4 red cards, and they include, like, let's say my best card is like I have a Mire's Grasp, a Final Death, just a couple random black and red creatures, and maybe one like a Rose's Blessing. So a good start to a black-red deck, 3 good removal spells, and like 5 random creatures. I'm probably not taking Dream Trawler there. Like, if I think black and red are open, then I think my deck's going to end up being better. Because the problem with the Dream Trawler or Bust plan, which sometimes is right, I'd have to actually look at the exact pile of cards, is when you don't draw Dream Trawler, you just don't win.
Right.
And like, that's just a rough place to be in. And I don't think, and the disaster scenario is you end up like in some unholy Esper deck because you just don't get enough blue and white cards and you have to play the black cards. And Dream Trawler is not a very splashable card. White, blue. It's just not, it's very punishing on the mana base.
Right. Well, Toralf Zevran stared at his pile and stared at the pack and tanked it out and said, you know what? I'm doing it. And he took Dream Trawler and moved in on blue-white like a complete maniac. And the really interesting part is this would send shockwaves throughout that whole side of the table. I mean, you know, it train wrecked multiple, maybe not train wrecked, but it had a strong negative impact on multiple drafters there, because you know how it is. People kind of start to, okay, I think my opponent's probably in blue, white or black, red or whatever. And all of a sudden he's just snatching up every single blue and white card imaginable, particularly for Autumn, who just, you know, was drafting their seat and doing fine. And then all of a sudden it's like the person next to them is just windmilling their exact color.
And Autumn was passing to Toralf. Is that right?
Yeah, Autumn was on Toralf's right.
Yeah, so Toralf started in black-red with blue-white passing to him, which is a good place to be. And then you end up in blue-white with blue-white passing to you. And like pack 2, you get to reap the benefits, but pack 3 is going to be rough. Very
rough, and it was. So effectively, Toralf said, okay, this card's so good that I am willing to draft my deck effectively off of 2 packs. I mean, he was basically forced to just scrap the cards that he had already had and try to scrap it together. Now, you might think, well, that's not the worst because this set is so dense in playables. But one of the packs you're getting passed to is being cut hard by a person in literally your exact 2 colors. So that's rough. And it's risky, right? I mean, it's just super risky to be like, well, I'll just find enough playables and we'll see how it works. So he stays the course and he drafts blue-white for the rest. And how did you describe, did you say an unholy Esper deck?
Yes.
That's exactly what he had. He had an absolute pile by the end because he had to scrap so hard to make playables that he ended up with some really good highlights. Like he had an Ephemia. I'm assuming he got that in the first pack. You know, that's a really strong little card and a fine card to splash as well. And I think he had a removal spell or 2 in black. But I mean, this deck was playing, it was splashing 3 or 4 black cards, if I remember correctly, in a Dream Trawler deck. And as you mentioned, that is not where you want to be. He was playing like Towering Wave Mystic and, you know, the Lantern or whatever, just to cycle it and, you know, just anything that he could do. And the bottom line is when he laid out his deck, he was short playables, like significantly short playables. You know, I would say 5 or 6 or something like that. So we had to go for the splash with the Dream Trawler. And that's, of course, not where you want to be because you're trying to maximize on your Dream Trawler casts or whatever throughout the course of the tournament. And it was fascinating to see what it did. Paul and I graded the decks, each deck in each pool for the video. And on the first draft, we were that actually was on the other draft. You know, there was like an A and an A minus and some B's and a C or something, you know, some C's or whatever. It was kind of like what you would think of as a reasonable distribution. And on Toralf's table, there wasn't an A. Like everybody else just got bombed out because he took that card. I think, you know, it also could have just been weak packs or whatever. But oh my God, it had such a huge effect. And poor Toralf didn't do well in the draft. He actually did get 2 losses there too, so it didn't work out for him either.
Yeah, I mean,
what a crazy situation.
I don't want to say that he's just wrong. I think that for in most situations like this, I'd say you shouldn't take the Dream Trawler, but it doesn't take much. Like imagine the scenario where we had, remember this, the draft we just did, where we had started with, we took Oracle into Acolyte of Affliction, into Omen of the Sea, into Dreadful Apathy. And then we settled on a pretty firmly like blue with 2 white cards at the end of pack 1. Imagine you were like close to that, and then you open an off-color rare. Then I'm way more likely to switch. Or imagine if Toralf had a very mediocre black-red pile, like he's got the Myers Grasp, but that's the only like premium card he has, and then he just has a bunch of Scophos War Leader, you know, level of cards, you know, like Omen of the Forge and stuff like that. Right. At that point, just take the Dream Trawler because at least when you draw that card, you'll probably win. You know, so I don't know what percentage, like if 100% is the best deck imaginable and 0% is the worst deck imaginable, I'd say you're probably supposed to take the Dream Trawler Gambit if you're in the like closer to like 40 or 50 range. This draft is out really weird though. Because of the structural stuff that's weird, you actually don't care about 3-0ing. You just want a 2-0 or 2-1.
Yes, that's true.
That makes me less likely to want to take Dream Trawler, I think.
Same. Me too. Also, Dream Trawler is the perfect card
you,
for this discussion because it's double of 2 colors, right? Like,
if
you are hard black-red and you open up, Curabessa Sea God, go for it. But double? Ugh.
Yeah, this is the draft where you get max punished for ending up with a train wreck. Whereas if you have just an average black-red deck, like, yeah, maybe you're certainly not a favorite to 2-1, but at least you have a shot at it, whereas the Dream Trawler Gambit, I think you're banking a lot on that Dream Trawler and maybe opening another good blue or white card in the last pack. Whereas you need things to go break your way to end up with like a really good deck, and you have a higher ceiling because Dream Trawler is an absurd card. Right. But when you end up in a situation where your deck is just not a deck, then you're going to get really punished.
Yeah, and that's what happened to poor. I mean, Charof's a good player too, and he drafts all the time. He's like a cube.
Of course, he's a PT champion. He's and even better, and even more impressive. He's a member of the Arena Boys, the vaunted club there.
That's the most impressive thing. Okay, but anyway, we had to talk about that because what an incredible story in the draft of all drafts. I mean, as it turned out, it's hard to put the monetary value on it because it was too complicated to figure out, but it had a natural weight to that draft that was just completely absurd. And then to find yourself facing down that pick, oh man, I don't envy Toralf to be sitting there and having to try to make that call in the moment. I think I just would have chickened out and just taken whatever and just been like, it's Dream Trawler. Like I would have moved for Curabessa the Sea God, fine, well, ditch one color, but
because if you open Curabessa the Sea God or Cetessan Champion is just a ridiculous card, right? And then you're just like, okay, well, I'll ditch these 3 red cards for that. That's one thing. You're just putting your whole pile into your sideboard when you take Dream Trawler.
Yeah, and he knew it. He knew what he was doing. I mean, Trolf's no fool, so he was like, well, this card's just worth it, and he took that gamble. It unfortunately didn't pay off for him, but what a sick spot. Okay, let's call it a show there, Luis. If you want to find us on social media, I am Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com. And don't forget to check out channelfireball.com. I mentioned just a few minutes ago, or actually when we started the show, about the buy list, channelfireball.com/buy list. You're definitely going to want to check that out. But while you're there, you can get anything you need, especially if you're doing the whole trade-in for store credit thing. Once your store credit hits, it'll show up in your account, and they're going to have everything that you need. If you want to build a new deck with standard cards, they're going to have them in stock. And if you want to, maybe draft or something, you can pick up some booster packs or a booster box to draft with your friends. And while you're there, awesome content right on the front. You mentioned the Arena Boys. And of course, there's a whole bunch of videos, podcasts, and articles from some of the best content creators on the magic internet. And it's all there for free right on the front page of channelfireball.com. Please do check them out. And that is going to do it for this one. We'll see you next week, not once, but twice.
So I played a pretty fun game while at the Pro Tour in Phoenix. Pat Cox brought Tiny Epic Galaxies is the name of the game. Okay. And
that's a cool name.
It's got, it's in a series of games, and the tiny part is they all fit in one little box. And I put a pretty high premium on it. So look, it's kind of funny. So my board game tastes I actually like games that are relatively fast and don't take much time to set up, but have good strategy elements to it. And basically, I'm not a huge fan of the like Scythe or like Warhammer type experience where it's like takes hours to play the game and there's a million things you have to set up. But I also do want to make good, meaningful decisions. And I think Tiny Epic Galaxies did a really good job of that, where basically each player is trying to like develop their space civilization. You start with like some ships and some resources, and every turn it's a little bit like Yahtzee where you roll dice. And the die have each different symbols on them and that represent different things you can do in the game, like move one of your ships or, use one of your planets or what have you. And you can reroll your dice. You get one free reroll, and then you have to pay a resource energy to reroll past that. But it lets you especially later in the game when you get more dice, as you colonize more planets and you expand your civilization, you get to roll more dice. It's cool because you're like, well, because the goal of the game is to score points by colonizing planets or advancing your civilization. And you'll end up in a spot where you're like, well, if I make this play, and this play, that'll get me what I want, but I need these like specific different symbols or die rolls, or I could go a different direction because what you're doing is for each planet you're like racing with other players to try to complete the track first, and then you get the planet and they lose all their progress there.
Does that knock them out? Or
yeah, well, it sends their ship back to their home base.
Okay, so they get to still play, but it's a big setback.
Yeah, like let's say there's a planet worth 7 points. It's like the max points, and it takes like 5 moves to colonize it. We can both be racing there, but then whoever ends up hitting the end first it's a winner take all.
Okay.
One cool thing about the game, which is good and bad, is one of the resources is called culture, right? Your two energies or your two resources are energy and culture. While on another player's turn, you can spend a culture to copy the last move they did. So it can kind of be one of the downsides is like, let's say me and you were racing to get a planet and you ended up, you were only like two spaces short and I was 3. If I start moving up the track and you have culture, you can copy my moves and you'll get there first. So it can kind of lock you out of some plays. But on the other hand, there's a lot of different ways to go around it. Like, let's say I wanted to win in that situation. I could try to like use an ability of another planet to move my ship, which you might not be able to do or something like that. So, the game plays out pretty well. It's relatively fast. Like Pat and I were just playing in between rounds, which is great. You know, it would take us like, 15 or 20 minutes to play a 2-person game. It can be up to 5 players. And, it did just come in one little box. Very simple to set up, not that complicated to learn, but had a good amount of strategic depth. So I really liked it. This is again, Tiny Epic Galaxies. It's like $25, and to be clear, I don't know. I need to say this. I have no affiliation with them at all. I just like the game. So when I do review a product that I have an interest in, I will certainly let you know. But this I just wanted to do a review of a game I played that I thought was pretty good. It fit into exactly the category that me and Pat like, because we'll go to these tournaments together, and he'll usually bring a game we can play in between rounds. And I think this definitely qualified for some of the longer rounds.
That's a sweet one.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. Also, I destroyed Pat. I beat him 4 games in a row. So.
The real point of the story.
Note I didn't mention the previous game which he brought, which he beat me like 10 times in a row. So we're not reviewing that one. We don't do that one.